We have a little bit unusual evening because it's not only a council meeting, it's an education for council people. We have some public hearings first, and the first one is relative, a public hearing on an ordinance amending subsection 1266.09, parentheses H, close parentheses, parentheses 1BII, accessory uses and structures for fences and walls, and declaring it as an emergency. We have some public hearing testimony from Mr. Mark Hicks from the Evendale Pool and Patio. Would you care to step up?
How are you?
Good evening, how are you?
Good.
Good. We're glad to have you here tonight.
Thank you for having me. So I am here to answer questions with regards to automatic pool covers in lieu of a fence for swimming pools. So.
Can you explain, I've tried to articulate what you've shared with me, the process, the distinction between the safety of fences versus these automatic pool covers, what your studies and your experience has shown?
So can I throw you under the bus a little? Just a little?
Sure.
Okay. I was at Jeff and Natalie's home going over a pool renovation. And if anyone's been to their home, they have their pool kind of corralled for safety. And my comment was, why didn't you fence the whole yard so you had full use of it? And their comment was, well, wanted to make sure that it was very safe for the kids. We were talking about a huge renovation and putting on a retractable cover and then fencing the yard. And I brought up the fact that, you know, we've done variances for pools without a fence with a cover. It's approved in a lot of areas throughout the country. It's just not approved here in Hamilton County. Butler County is in Warren and parts of Claremont County. So Jeff did some of his own research, but what I said to him was, your fence that's around that pool is not effective because it doesn't latch the way it's supposed to. It doesn't day one, as it did on day one. I said, so the only way to really keep that area safe is if you had a cover that was on. So, you know, this is not new. You know, this is not a new item that's been out there. It's been out there since the 80s. And, you know, the drownings happen with pools that are fenced in without a cover. And there's average of 3,500 drownings a year. And more than half of those are kids that are 15 years or older, and more than half of them are not around a swimming pool, bodies of water, lakes, streams, oceans. So if you start to do all the numbers, you know, there's an area here in Cincinnati that everyone considers to be, you know, a lot of acreage, which that's not reality, and that's Village of Indian Hill. They require no fence, and they require no cover. I don't agree with it, but that's just the way that it is. So, you know, when I was talking to Jeff and Natalie about it with the grandkids and all that, the safest way for them is to put the cover on. Well, most people can't afford a cover and a fence. And so you go back and forth of what should somebody do. The safest way to protect a body of water is to keep it covered. And I can tell you, due to the number of them we install, the people keep them covered because the cost savings of maintaining the pool, the safety of it. So, you know, Jeff had asked me to come in here. I didn't know there was going to be all this.
Is it
Hey,
typical?
listen, we got a lot going on tonight. I got a lot going on
Yeah.
tonight.
I'd probably not worn my shorts, but it was 90 degrees out today. So.
Is it typical that these are handled by variance in most communities?
So where it started for me is in Warren County, they do not require a fence if you have the automatic cover. I built a pool in Harlan Township that Warren County presides over. It's the only zoning one that requires a fence around a pool. So that's where this whole thing started, of them rewriting their zoning. So they rewrote their zoning, took us 2 years to do, but I have two, Batavia Township, Hamilton Township, and Warren County, that both got variances for pools and no fence. It's because they literally had a lake in their backyard. Both of them did. But the reality is, I mean, it's a body of water. You can go to here, the fountain over before at Menards, kid can drown in that. It's not fenced in. So at some point, the onus has to be on the homeowner. And people go, well, what if they don't cover it? Well, I can guarantee you the fences don't work that are around a pool. The gates never work 6 months later. And no one ever goes back and checks them. So, you know, it's kind of educating yourself about it a little bit more and understanding.
And that's why we brought you in, is to try to get some of the background.
The death rate, which, you know, everyone gasped at, but, you know, it's probably less than, you know, 1,700 of them are children, and they're all around pools that have a fence, or they're around a public pool that has a fence and a lifeguard. So when you go to the statistics, there's not been one drowning of a child with a pool that had an automatic cover on it. They talk about a lot of the incidences where kids fall in them. There's, you know, on top of the cover. I mean, we could all be, well, not all of us here, there's too many, but we could stand on the cover. So, you know, it's far safer than any fence. And I mean, that's just a fact, you know, from all the research over the years.
Can you explain how the specific type of cover that's called out in the code that's permissible?
Well,
distinguish that from just any cover, because I think there's a lot of misconception as to a cover. You know, you have the winter cover that you latch on. Can you describe this?
So it's an automatic pool cover that is either, you know, I've never done a manual one. I would never do one. We use one that is a keypad controlled, you know, and they're all tested by the ASTM standards, and there's several manufacturers out there that make them. Majority of them are all over in Indianapolis, the 3 of them that are over there. So, you know, it's just a retractable cover that goes inside the coping or is mounted to the top of the concrete that glides across there and covers that entire pool completely.
And you say it's automatic, meaning?
You punch the code in and you press the button to open or close it.
Okay. Does it ever close without?
It cannot, because you'd trap somebody in there.
Right.
They used to have a remote control that you could actually use, and, you know, that you could take into the house or wherever you wanted to.
So there's no when it's not being used, it closes. It's not going to do that. You've got to remember to close your.
Correct.
Just like you got to remember to close your gate.
Correct.
Just a question. If the Ohio Basic Building Code requires either, I think.
It does not require anything anymore.
It doesn't? They got rid of all requirements?
Correct,
The
and
one
I
you
sent.
gave us said.
It's marked out. That's the line item, and that's
310904 got marked out completely.
correct. And that is from, go to the email. Did I give you guys the one that has the line item that's marked out?
No, you gave, well, the second
It's page 2.
Page 2 of this one isn't marked out.
Okay, it
Is
says
page 3 or
exception.
4? It's marked out with gates.
It says exception. A swimming
Not
pool
an
with a
exception, they have an exception. The exception
Cor-
is for the power safety cover or spa with a safety cover complying with that. But that's the exception from the requirement for enclosures.
Correct. If it has that, you don't need it.
Right, but what I'm saying is, when you say that, there's no requirements. If the Ohio Basic Building Code requires it statewide, then whether or not it's in the zoning code, it's required. Something's required.
So there's nothing in the state of Ohio for a residential swimming pool to have an enclosure around it. They took it out. It's all
That's all
on
repealed.
onus on zoning.
Okay. Okay, so that this part that you gave us is no longer,
That is the valid one.
I'm confused. I got the one from Mark Hicks.
You have the correct one, yes. So that is the one, and then I also, I probably didn't give you the repetition of it at 3109.
Okay, swimming pools, they delete the definition.
They deleted the fencing requirement.
Okay.
The state did. Because you have the one that's from the email from Steve.
Yeah, and then on the second page,
Correct.
swimming pool enclosures shall comply with sections, and they have two sections. They talk a barrier or the exception with the safety cover.
You have to have one or the other.
Yeah, one or the other, right. That's what they require now, the state does.
Correct.
So when you say Indian Hill has no zoning requirement, they still have to comply with the state building code.
They do not.
They do not comply with
They
the
do
state
not.
building code. They're accepted from it.
They are exempt from it.
Okay, just curious.
They are exempt from it. I'm with you. I'm with you.
Okay, well, anyway, I just, that's the,
So this email was from 2011.
okay.
And when it was rewritten, there is not a fencing requirement at
Okay,
all in the
so
state.
This one was from 2011. This one no longer exists.
Correct, and that's why there was the strikeouts that were on there, that he stated in there. He says that they did the strikeouts.
Page 1 on the very
Well,
bottom.
they did the strikeouts, but then they had something to put in after it. Any indoor or outdoor structure, chamber, tank containing a body of water for swimming, diving, or whatever, they added that.
Well, there is no requirement for the state for a fence around a swimming pool. It is all zoning driven.
Okay.
I-
I don't know, I'll have to look at that further, I'm just confused. But that's not the first time.
That's okay.
Okay, are there any more questions or comments?
I just had a question. You made a distinction between manual covers and automatic covers. So I wasn't able to determine from this, is the ASTM requirement specifically for automatic covers?
It is for both. So there is a manual cover that is that goes in the same type of housing that someone can actually close with, that doesn't have power to it. I've never installed one of those.
How many of these have you installed in Cincinnati or this?
Hundreds.
Hundreds? And you've done hundreds of them, and do some of them still have fences, or do you take the fence down when you install them? Are these new pools?
They do not take fences down. We have the ones that have the variants on them that have no fence.
Okay, so those are the ones you've installed.
You said hundreds over what period of time? Since the 80s?
15. I've only been doing it.
Okay.
I'm not that old. I may look it, but. We've been installing automatic covers for probably 17 years.
Anyway, the remodeling of the building over here looks great.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, no, it looks great, though. Are you going to give up on your one in the floodplain?
I know, you guys want to buy it?
Any
It's a
other
different
questions?
meeting.
Any other questions or comments? If not, thank you, Mr. Hicks.
Okay,
for coming
the
in.
safety of it, if the research, and if anyone wants to reach out to me, and ask me questions.
I happen to watch This Old House on Saturday mornings on PBS. And last week, they were installing a swimming pool in Narragansett, Massachusetts. And the guy said, well, we have to put up a fence around this, don't we? and they had a rolling cover, automatic, and he said, the state of Massachusetts does not require fences.
Right. Like Indiana, it was a 5-foot fence several years ago, or a cover. Couldn't have a 4-foot fence, a 5-foot fence, or a cover. So only there's a little township out of Batesville that they still require a fence. So, I mean,
All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate
Hopefully that was
the
helpful.
information.
I didn't plan on all of this, but you guys have a wonderful evening.
Did a good job. Stay. All right, public hearing number 2, an ordinance amending Part 12, Title 4 of the Evendale Code of Ordinances to define and regulate discount retail, pawn retail, thrift retail, and self-storage warehouse uses and declaring it as an emergency. Anyone here to talk about the pawn shops? If not, that will constitute the public hearing for this particular subject.
I have a motion.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing section.
Thank you. Second?
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Now, if I can disturb you all, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag and begin the council meeting. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk will take the roll.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Here.
Ms. McDaniel?
Here.
Mr. Schaefer?
Here.
Mr. Putoff?
Here.
Mr. Albrecht?
Here.
Okay, all being present, we will now have the fire department oath for Captain Graham.
He left.
Is the captain here tonight?
He's here.
Please. Oh. We will twiddle our thumbs for a few minutes.
It's not nice.
I guess it's the nerves, huh?
Let's go down to proclamation for Lieutenant Joe Asbrock. Joe, are you here? There's our proclamation.
Isabella, come on in. Bella, come on in.
Bring your friends.
Bella, come on in.
Bring your friends. Little guys are getting nervous. This is an appreciation to Lieutenant Joseph R. Asbrock for his years of service in the village of Evendale Police Department. Whereas Joseph R. Asbrock, hired on July 11th, 1988, is
I'd like to say thank you, and I'd like to say council, everybody, those of you for letting me do this. Sometimes it causes a little bit of issues on one end or the other. But this is what I do. Somebody I do want to thank, if I could call up, sure, would be my wife.
You don't have to leave. You can stay for the rest of the meeting. It'll only take about an hour or so.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. They were pretty quiet. Wait till it calms down a little bit. We have asked Sue Hare from the iSpace to come here this evening and tell us a little bit about what are our new partners at the Gorman Heritage Farm. I think everybody is very interested in that.
Good evening, everyone. Gosh, this is a little imposing, isn't it? Thanks for having me here tonight. I just want to say we are really excited to be a part of the village. We spent probably from 2001, when we got our start, until 2009 in the founder's dining room, all doing outreach. And then in 2009, we got a home at Great Oaks. Robin Wright was the president there at the time and really liked what we were doing, allowed us to use some classrooms to start having programs in-house. From then, we leased some space on a building on their property. It's called the IRC building. In 2016, we moved there, and the programs just exploded. In a normal year, we see about, well, not see necessarily, but serve about 30,000 students and teachers. We're identified as a Better Business Bureau Torch Award, and so that means we have very high ethics. And at the time, last year, probably around March in 2020, we were told, or maybe actually a little bit before that Great Oaks needed the space that we were using and we needed to find a new home. Then COVID hit, and we had to lose a lot of our field trip programs. About 200 programs in the spring. We normally see about 650 students over the summer. You know, who knew whether we were going to be able to survive the summer? My predecessor left at the end of April, and I took over in the middle of a pandemic. So that was exciting. We had a leased space in Blue Ash that I canceled the lease because we had no revenue. And then we started looking for a home. And the board felt very confident that we could purchase something. We looked and looked and looked. There was not a lot of really fitting properties out there. One of our board members contacted someone from the village, and I'm not sure. And he put us in touch with Chris, who was on the board at Gorman, and they had interest in the UAW property. So all that context is we got together with Chris and the Gorman board and their staff, kind of decided, can we work together? Can we live in the same house, so to speak? And we can, and we did. So we formed a partnership, legal partnership called Soil and Stars. And yeah, it is cool. So the partnership actually purchased the building, and then iSpace will pay rent and Gorman will pay rent. And we'll have some shared spaces in the building. So all that's just to say I'm really, really excited. I love the building. I love the location. I love being in the village. Now, what do we do? Has anybody heard of us?
Yes?
Yeah? Okay. So we do STEM programming, science, technology, engineering, and math. We anchor a lot of it in space science, but we do rocketry, robotics, coding. We do science process skills for the young ones. We do all kinds of different camps. We usually, not this year because we didn't have a home, we only did about 20 camps this year, but normally do between 35 and 42 camps a year, entering kindergarten all the way through high school. We do teacher workshops. We do grant-based programs. So we take Lego Math is one of the programs that's a grant-based program. We take them into schools that are underperforming in 2nd and 4th grades, and we do 20 weeks of Lego Math. And we sponsor different events. So we are the host of the Regional Science Olympiad. We had been the partner for First Tech Robotics, which I don't know if anybody's heard of First Lego League. It's a robotics competition. And we have a big community event every year called iSpace Day. and we have about 30 to 40 exhibitors from the museum center, the observatory, different companies will come in and do hands-on activities. I have some little papers I'll give you in a minute. But one of the things that I thought was really interesting about this partnership is that we both entities serve students and the public in a similar kind of field where sciences, not the same sciences, but still complementary, and in the same kind of space. So the spaces that we use are very similar. We're thrilled to be partnered with Gorman. We've learned a lot from each other, working together over the past, I think we started this process in December and finally closed on the building in May. We're partially moved in and working on what the building is going to look like going forward, because if you've been in it, it's a huge banquet hall. There's no classrooms there, so we have to put in classrooms. Very excited to be here, though. One thing I would love to get your support, which just being here shows me that you're supporting us, but if we could get publicity in your newsletter, if we have an upcoming event. I don't know what the process for doing something like that would be. And if we would be invited to any kind of community events here. We often will go to a science night at a school or some other kind of event where we would participate, have a booth, have a little hands-on activity that helps us get exposure as well. So thank you for having me. I'll give you these. Any questions?
Yeah, just one. How many students do you anticipate coming to your facility, like on a daily basis, that sort of thing? I'm just curious as to the occupancy, just out of idle curiosity.
So when we were at the peak before COVID, we would have about 60 in the I mission and probably another 60 if we had two groups at the same time. We didn't have that every day. So that would be the most we would have like in a day, would be about 120.
You have like a group of 30 in one room and a group of 30 in the other room.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, just curious.
Yep.
And your events where you had your open house and that sort of thing, you'll anticipate doing that in your new facility?
Yes.
Okay, and how many people does that draw?
Well, when we had it at Great Oaks, we probably through the course of the day saw about 1,800 people.
Okay, so that you need to coordinate with the farm because you don't want to do it on sunflower.
You don't want to
festival.
mess with the sunflower.
Oh, no, for sure.
You don't want to mess with the sunflower.
Yeah.
Be a little crowded.
It would be very crowded. No, we coordinate. We have a shared calendar now, and so we know when things like the parking area is going to be used. Maybe it's because a group of volunteers is coming or something like that. So yeah,
You've got that worked out.
Yeah.
What is your source of funding? Do you get government funds or?
No government funds.
Okay.
We do not.
Strictly-
About in a normal year, again, I'm going back to pre-COVID, about 54% come from fees. Fees that schools pay to come to us for our field trips, fees that parents pay to send their child to a summer camp. So just over half. And then another big portion, about 35% comes from grants. And then the rest comes from donations. So.
Anyone else have any questions?
Okay.
I think you'll find that Evendale is a great place. And I think this is kind of a marriage made in heaven.
Oh, yeah.
You and the farm. I think you're going to find great synergies, and I know the other parts of the village will be fine places for high space to be involved with us. And we have a town meeting coming up this fall, and that's a good place to display what you do and so forth. And I'm sure you'll find us most welcome.
Well, terrific. I started my career in Evendale at GE, so I had worked for GE Aviation for about 18 years before leaving, so I'm quite familiar with the area.
Okay, very good, very good.
But here, I'll set us back over here.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, now we need to approve some minutes. We need to approve the minutes from the June council meeting and the July council meeting. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Okay,
We should also do the minutes from the committees from last month and this, from June and July. You know, we said the council meetings, when you said that for the 2 months, but also the committee meetings for the 2 months.
We usually just.
That's on the same, that's on the same line.
It's on the same line? Okay.
If you want to do it again, it's fine.
okay. Now we'll have department reports. First of all, Finance Committee.
Mayor, the trend is, we're not surprised, revenues are still down. Tax receipts for July were about 978,000, down over last year by about a little over 300,000. Year-to-date receipts are down about almost $1 million over year. Overall, though, receipts are still exceeding expenditures, and that's always the key, and that by a very slim margin of $1,800. So I don't know that we'll be able to make that same statement next month. The operating surplus is still, just to give somebody who's not familiar with the overall surplus, operating surplus still exceeds $18 million, so we are safe as to be able to manage through obviously a tough time, but hopefully that's on the short end of we're getting towards the end, although with COVID we don't know. Gorman Farm, other than the iSpace introduction, visitorship and membership remain very high. The last week of summer camp, I guess you're now completed summer camps. Reminder that fresh market meats and produce, chickens, need to be ordered and then picked up by the end of, I guess, through October. Reordering, are there any turkeys left?
You can still order, but it's going quicker.
All right. If you want a turkey, order it now. Row by Row is sold out. That is next weekend, and the Sunflower Festival is October 2nd and 3rd. Hopefully we have good weather then. The Recreation Department, we had 181 participants in the Conquer the Hill, the Step Challenge. Hopefully that's last year. We have to do a Step Challenge when we get back to actually racing next year. Swim team, this is kind of getting old. It's getting very redundant having to announce that we won another championship. We have won, I asked Kim to find out how many, and it's been, at least we went back to 1996, and we have won all but 3 years. One, of course, was COVID, so that really doesn't count. And then the other two were in 99 and 2011. So about every 10, 12 years,
Somebody else
is gonna get
sneaks
ahead of
in.
us, so.
We won the last 9 in a row.
But we've since 2012, we've won every one since, so. And like the farm, summer camps are winding up and finishing. The service and service department, just a few matters. The license plate readers, this is more of a community advisory. The new license plate readers have been installed and cameras are working. So for those who want to try to circumvent the speed and such. Founders Pavilion, I know everybody's been noticing that a lot of the stone off the wall at Founders Pavilion has been kind of falling off. they're working on final quotes, and hopefully they'll get on that work in the very near future. And ODOT has declared that the I-75 project is substantially complete, except for the punch list that James is working on.
Key word,
That may last for another few years.
the key word is substantial.
And just as we're all suffering through the Duke Energy Pipeline, and we just appreciate everybody's patience. It's still, hopefully in the next month or so, we'll see that winding up. We'll see an end when it ends.
Jeff, just one comment. The stonework on the Founders Pavilion wall and the stonework on the Veterans Memorial are different. And I was wondering if you're redoing the Founders Pavilion wall, if you could make it consistent.
That is part of what we are endeavoring to do the quotes. Because the first couple quotes we got replaced it in kind. And we had the same comment that should match having the same style of stone and the caps for it on top. So that's what we are working through right now and hope
Okay,
to
I
have
just-
this finalized.
just was
But
curious.
yes, we had the same reaction.
Good idea.
So.
Nothing further, Mayor.
Any other questions or comments for Finance Committee? If not, we'll have Police and Fire.
Okay. Let me start with fire. We will be having a hiring committee meeting on the 24th to interview 5 candidates to fill vacant firefighter position. As a COVID update, Hamilton County, if you haven't heard, is now strongly recommending that we wear masks due to the rising number of cases. Last week's report was that there were 2,400 cases in Hamilton County. Just to give you a comparison factor, at the same time last month, that number was 1,700. The R factor has increased to 1.31. 51% of the county is vaccinated. And we had a little increase in the state from last week's meeting. 50% of Ohio is vaccinated, and the majority of people, as in 97% of the people that are in hospitals, are not vaccinated. That's kind of where we stand with COVID. We will be trying to do a light up the campus in red on October 2nd in recognition of fallen firefighters. More information to come later on that. Okay, in the police, we had a use of force review. We're planning to do this kind of just annually. If you recall, last year we went through our policy and the report that we actually used and reviewed them. And the chief gave us a report of kind of where we stand. So a couple of things to note is that he went back, and thanks to the chief for doing this, to give us perspective. We went back to 2019, we had 2 cases. We had no cases in 2020 and 1 case so far this year. But the process is that's a report is generated when there is an incident where an officer is engaged in reportable use of force, and then the officer's actions are then reviewed by a supervisor who was not involved in the accident, and then and then the police chief. All of our officers are wearing body cameras, and they are required to have them on. And the chief, as a follow-up, reviews body cam footage on a regular basis. The chief also was kind enough to provide us with a list of training courses that officers have gone through over the last 3 years, and that ranges from anti-bias training to de-escalation training. And also, there was a wide range of training, but you also have to keep in mind the training was difficult, in particular last year because of COVID, yet training continues. And crisis intervention training is another form of training that's done, and that's required of all new officers and periodically we send other officers through that. There are specific procedures you have to go through for excited delirium, which I'm sure you've heard about, even if you may not understand it. That's if police encounter it, they're required to give aid, and there are different things done around that. And the Ohio Collaborative has a set of use of force standards, and our department is completely up to date on all of those standards. So I just wanted to share with you that was the outcome of our report. And for those of you who weren't in the committee meeting, all this information is posted out on the OneDrive, and I think you might find it useful to look and see the professionalism of our department when they encounter incidents like this.
There are videos out there as well.
Yes, yes. Moving on to cultural arts, the big art party was held this past Friday, very well attended, over 300 people. Hours got extended because people wanted to stay. So that's a good sign. We had a first improv performance was held at the Bell Tower Pavilion. It was very successful, and more improv sessions are planned for later on, so look for more information about that. Wine tasting is sold out for August. Art Ventures is also completely sold out, and director and others met with the mayor and such, met with KDF to review the building, and they're going to provide us with some ideas and recommendations later this month based on their review. For building planning and zoning, well, we've had the public hearings, and we're going to have, I guess, second reading of ordinances this month. There's been a permit filed for the third home in the Moeller Woods development at the corner of Moeller and Cooper. And Rodney was mentioning to us that there's been an increase in the number of signs you may see on poles in the neighborhood, and we're endeavoring to take those down. So if you see them, please refer them to Andrew so he's aware. And we met, I think everyone got an email with some information regarding what we call the Homer's property. And we met with the ownership there, and there's some property violations that we shared with them. And I don't know if we've obtained this, but we're trying to get permission to inspect the interior of the building so we can make some determination about that particular state. And then on a good news note, we passed last month, I think it was, an ordinance trying to recoup our expenses for property that wasn't being taken care of, and we received a check covering those expenses. And the property is being taken care of now in an improved fashion.
Before we had to place a lien, correct?
Yes, yes.
Before we
Yes.
actually.
Yes, we actually got the payment.
So it worked.
So we did not
got
have
the
to
money.
go to the tax director. And that's the report. Any questions?
Any questions or comments?
I've got one, but did you have something?
No? Go
Just
ahead.
Mayor, a quick update on Homer's.
Yeah.
We are told by Homer's attorney that they should have a contract to demolish the building by the end of this week.
Yeah.
Not that the building will come down by the end of this week, but it will be under contract.
Yeah. That's good news. It's a long time.
It definitely is.
But keep in mind, we haven't seen it yet, we've just been told that.
And it may take a while.
I do have some. I just want to congratulate Susan and the Cultural Arts. That art show was phenomenal, holding the line. It was it was one of the best, and Jimmy Jones, who curated that art show. It was probably one of the best collection of artists in the region, and we were very blessed to have them here at the Cultural Arts Center.
I looked at the one by the painter who did my portrait,
David Mueller.
David Mueller. example is it was $11,000. In addition to that, I would have had to build a new house to find a place to put it because it was huge.
It was a big one.
But we had a good conversation. Anyway, any other comments? A couple things I have is, remind you, tomorrow evening, 5:30, we're going to discuss capital improvements in the village and what we can spend. We have the sinkhole repair up on Landmark's property is undergoing repair by our people in the village service department, and Landmark has agreed to pay for it. So we're moving forward with that. Probably, hopefully, be done by the end of the week. And James thinks it's there. The quarterly meeting of the IC Intercommunity Cable or Intercommunity Regulatory Commission was held this month. They reported that they have a lot of new equipment in their control room and they can do more things. One of the things is they have a group of scouts who are working on a merit badge in communications and are able to come in and access the equipment as well. I might say to Sue that, or Ms. Hare, that that's a source for you also. You probably know about it already, so that's a source for you. And they brought up the point that this is election year, and they will again be having candidates come in and do their bit for re-election or election on ICRC, and they'll play it then at various times in the course of the before the election. So you'll get notice of that, and you may want to do that. The one thing that I think I would like a little discussion about is a lot of people are going back to masks. My question of council is, do you want to go back to masks for council meetings, or are you comfortable where we are? We issued a new policy last week about unvaccinated employees and what they had to be doing to keep safe if they came across a person that was unvaccinated or was COVID positive, things that they have to do according to the CDC. But I'd kind of like to get the feeling of council about the use of masks at the council meeting. If you have no feelings,
My feeling is that if anybody wants to wear one, they're welcome to it.
well,
And that, I think that should be the policy, because otherwise we'll be mandating masks forever, because after you get done with the Delta variant comes through, they got the Lambda variant that's been showing up, and then they're going to have some other variant, and it's going to be like the flu. But people who are fully vaccinated, while they can get it, they aren't getting severe cases of it for the most part. And that's the, and people who have, complicating other diseases, they should, get vaccinated, and they should wear a mask to protect themselves. But, some studies say that the cloth masks really don't do much, and that the N35.
N95.
Those masks are the ones that really protect people, and so they ought to get those kind of masks. But for people that don't have heart conditions, don't have lung issues, don't have those, they ought to wear a mask.
If people aren't wearing, if people are wearing those N95s or whatever the number is, and they're not following the protocols to clean them, then they're really not.
They're a one-use kind of thing. Yeah, they used to have those down at the farm for when we bale hay, and I couldn't wear them. It made you too hot. So,
But I certainly think everybody has the right to wear a mask if they're
right,
wearing
yeah, if they want to, yeah. That's my feeling on it, but I-
I think we should follow the fire chief's lead, because you live and breathe this every day. You know best on our guidance.
We're following CDC recommendations.
Okay. So if we are, if that department is, then we probably should.
If you follow the CDC recommendations, it probably would be that the council should begin wearing masks.
Well, you shouldn't be up here on the podium this close together either. Should maintain the distancing, we ought to get rid of the chairs.
Well, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
That's right. Anyone else have a thought or an opinion, or?
I think at this point, it comes down to personal responsibility, and those people who are vulnerable need to take the steps to protect themselves. Those people who have taken the step to either have had it or who have been vaccinated, that they certainly, as we've all said, can wear the mask, but should not be required until something further mandate comes down, if at all. But I think it's about personal responsibility. If you're vulnerable, don't go out, wear the mask, get vaccinated.
I think we need to pay attention to how this is trending and what steps are being taken. I mean, we did discuss it in the committee meeting and did not feel that we could react in time to deal with it as far as today's meeting is concerned. And while I understand the issue of personal responsibility, and while we may feel comfortable interacting with each other if we have that protection, our meetings are open to the public, and I don't think that we can control, that we can, nor should we control who comes in. And with that, I think that we're putting unnecessary exposure on not just ourselves, but employees of the village as well. So I personally would recommend that we do go back to doing masks during council meetings unless this trend changes.
Most of the people that are getting sick are from the Delta strain of the virus these days, that I'm reading. And that could be a problem for us.
But even at that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, even at that, it seems that the statistics are showing that if they are vaccinated, they are not getting severely ill and ending up in the ICU on a ventilator.
That is correct. The statistic that Councilwoman Smiley Robinson shared was 97% of the people in the hospital with COVID are unvaccinated. So that means that 3% have been vaccinated. But none of the 3%, from my conversation with Greg Kesterman, the health director, none of them are in the ICU or on a ventilator.
And how many of the people, I forget the statistic, the 2,000 or whatever, the statistic who get the Delta variant end up in the hospital? Do you have any statistics on that?
No.
Because when you say 3%, it's not like if you get the Delta variant, you go to the hospital. There's only a certain percentage of people that get the variant, because most of it's supposed to be fairly mild, that end up going to the hospital. And then of those that go to the hospital, it's 3%.
The governor came out with some statistics today, and I read them, but I don't recall them. But
I did not see
there
them.
was a small amount of people that were vaccinated and were still going to the hospital. I think it was like 300 people in the state of Ohio that were still going to the hospital.
So that's a very small amount of the vaccinated people, and I think all of us have been vaccinated.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that's why.
But we still have employees who have not been vaccinated.
Well, I think both Jeff and I volunteered before any of that was tested to get the jab to see how it worked.
Well,
Having any problems?
it had been tested, it just hadn't been tested very much.
Right. It was not,
Right.
it was. Still
Unless you were in the alpha group.
Yeah, it was part of the testing to get it approved for use.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's why we did it.
I agree with Carolyn. I think we need to continue to look at it for next month, but I don't think we need to make a decision on that tonight.
Yeah, I would say we look at what the report is at the time of our committee meetings and make the decision then on what we do at the council meeting.
Is that agreeable with everybody? Fine by me. Okay. We will put it off till next week, and we will not have to wear masks tomorrow night. All right, let's go to the ordinances. The first ordinance is ordinance 21-46, and I asked to read it by title only.
So moved.
Second.
I'm sorry. Mr. Albrecht,
Yes.
Mr. Putoff,
Yes.
Mr. Sextro,
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel,
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson,
Yes,
Mr. Schaefer.
Yes.
Ordinance 21-46, an ordinance amending subsection 1266.09 H1BII, accessory uses and structures, fences and walls, and declaring it as an emergency. And this would be the second reading of the ordinance tonight.
Mayor, do we want to just go ahead and pass it, having heard, or what do you want to do?
I think there's still some questions out. I know Chris mentioned those in
I
the,
think we should still allow a third reading.
Just by the way, we looked at the state building code, and the state building code requires the fencing and the covers and that sort of thing for residential uses that have three or more families. And so that if you have an apartment building with a pool, you fall under those regulations. It's not for single-family residences.
Well,
So that was the,
let's let it ride this month. We'll bring it back next month. It'll be for third reading and pass or fail.
okay.
Pass or fail. Okay, next is ordinance 21-47. I'd like permission to read it by title only.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Sextro,
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht,
Yes.
Mr. Putoff,
yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson,
yes,
Mr. Schaefer.
Yes.
An ordinance amending Part 12, Section 4 of the Evendale Code of Ordinances to define and regulate regulate discount retail, thrift retail, pawn retail, and self-storage warehouse uses. This would be the second reading of the ordinance, and it will be on for a third reading next month. Next, we have ordinance 21-48. I ask for permission to read it by title only.
So moved.
second,
Mr. Putoff,
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson,
yes,
Mr. Albrecht,
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mr. Sextro,
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer.
Yes.
Ordinance approving granting consent to the Director of the Ohio Department of Transportation Authority to apply, maintain, repair standard longitudinal pavement markings and erect regulatory and warning signs on state highways inside the village corporate limits, and giving consent of the village for the Ohio Department of Transportation to perform maintenance and/or repair on state highways inside the village of Evendale. I ask for permission to suspend the third reading of the ordinance. This is up for third reading tonight. Someone want to move?
No, yeah, that's it.
We're saying we're ready to pass it.
So moved.
We're ready to pass it.
Second.
Mr. Putoff,
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht,
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel,
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson,
yes,
Mr. Sextro,
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer.
Yes.
I know. Now need a motion to adopt the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Putoff,
Yes.
Mr. Sextro,
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer,
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht,
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson.
yes,
I now declare ordinance 21-48 adopted. Next is ordinance 21-50. I need a permission to read it by title only.
so moved,
Second.
Ms. Smiley Robertson,
yes,
Mr. Sextro,
Yes.
Mr. Putoff,
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer,
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht.
Yes.
An ordinance approving an additional appropriation in the Arrowhub TIF Fund for engineering tests and declaring it as an emergency. I I need a motion to suspend the second and third reading of the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Putoff.
Yes.
Mr. Sextro.
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht.
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson.
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer.
Yes.
I now need a motion to adopt the emergency clause of the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Smiley Robertson.
Yes.
Mr. Putoff.
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer.
Yes.
Mr. Sextro.
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht.
Yes.
Need a motion to adopt the ordinance as an emergency.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Sextro.
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht.
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel.
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson.
Yes.
Mr. Putoff.
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer.
Yes.
I now declare ordinance 21-50 adopted as an emergency. Next is ordinance 21-51. I need permission to read it by title only.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Smiley Robertson.
Yes.
Mr. Sextro.
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht.
Yes.
Mr. Putoff.
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer.
Yes.
Ordinance making an appropriation in the American Rescue Plan/CARES Act Fund for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2021, and transferring allowable costs to the fund and declaring it as an emergency. Everyone know what this is about?
And
And I
for the
need-
most part, but does this take care of all the CARES Act money? Is there's still more out there that we might get?
Well, maybe.
I just,
Maybe.
Hi, good evening. No, the CARES Act money was from 2020. All of the funds that we received in 2020 for CARES was spent.
Okay.
So this is this funds related to the American Rescue Plan Act
Okay.
only.
Okay, and this will get rid of all the ones we've received so far?
Yes, so we've applied for and received one of the first tranches of those funds, and then we'll be eligible to get the second payment next year.
Next year, so we'll get some next year in 2022.
Right, it's about 142,000 this year and next, although I've requested
More.
leftovers.
I don't know if it matters, but the top of mine does not have -51 on the ordinance number.
Doesn't matter.
Just want to make sure.
Forget about it.
The new one, though.
I have a motion to suspend the second and third reading of the ordinance.
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Sextro.
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson.
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht.
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Putoff.
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer.
Yes.
I have a motion to adopt the emergency clause of the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Smiley Robertson.
Yes.
Mr. Putoff.
Yes.
Mr. Sextro.
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer.
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht.
Yes.
I have a motion to adopt the ordinance as an emergency.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Smiley Robertson.
Yes.
Mr. Sextro.
Yes.
Mr. Putoff.
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer.
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht.
Yes.
I now declare ordinance 21-51 adopted as an emergency. Next is ordinance 21-52. I need permission to read it by title only.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Albrecht.
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel.
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson.
Yes.
Mr. Sextro.
Yes.
Mr. Putoff.
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer.
Yes.
An ordinance approving the Hamilton County Tax Increment Review Committee recommendation to continue the Community Reinvestment Act, CRA, agreement with no modifications between the Village of Evendale and Breakfire, Inc., DBA Silco Fire and Security. I have a motion to suspend the second and third reading of the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Putoff.
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson.
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht.
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Sextro.
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer.
Yes.
Now I need a motion to adopt the emergency clause of the ordinance.
There's no emergency clause on it. So we can adopt the ordinance and then just, it'll be in effect in 30 days.
Okay? May I have a motion to adopt the ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Sextro.
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson.
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht.
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Putoff.
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer.
Yes.
I now declare ordinance 21-52 adopted. Next is ordinance 21-53. Need permission to read it by title only.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Ordinance authorizing the mayor to hire Allison Bishop Nasser as a part-time recreation programmer for the Recreation Department and declaring it as an emergency. I need a motion to suspend the second and third reading of the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Now I need a motion to adopt the emergency clause of the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Now I need a motion to adopt the ordinance as an emergency.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
I now declare ordinance 21-53 adopted as an emergency. Next is ordinance 21-54. I need permission to read it by title only.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
An ordinance approving the additional appropriation in the Arrowhead TIP Fund for sinkhole repairs and declaring it as an emergency.
Is this our half, and then Landmark, you said, was paying?
No, we are paying up front, and they will pay us back.
But they're going to pay for all of it.
Yes, they are.
We're just going to pay it up front.
Yeah, we needed to buy the materials, and so it's just a kind of a timing aspect of it, so that we had the ability to do so, to get it done while the weather was conducive this week, so.
About $9,200.
So this is just for materials, but what they're being charged is for labor and everything else, right?
No, they're being charged, they're gonna pay for the material cost,
Just material costs?
yes.
And we're just doing,
Our laborers, basically, the guys are just basically assigned that as part of their duties.
okay.
Is, just out of curiosity, this is more a Cynthia question. We're putting this money into a street improvement fund, but this is not a street improvement. You know, I'm just curious as to how broad that fund goes, as opposed to a grading fund or one of the other funds. Or you just needed somewhere to stash it?
No, that's not the.
It's going to last for a week or two.
It was my understanding that the sinkhole was close enough to the road that the reason we wanted that to be repaired was so that it doesn't compromise the integrity of the road that we just put in, which is why that justifies
Okay.
the payment for this.
Okay, just
So, yeah,
curious.
I wasn't just finding a bucket. It
And
was
that
for
was the
real.
understanding that I had as well in conversations with James.
Right.
Now, may I have a motion to suspend the second and third reading of the ordinance?
So, second.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Now I need a motion to adopt the emergency clause of the ordinance.
So moved?
Second?
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Now I need a motion to adopt the ordinance as an emergency.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
I now declare ordinance 21-54 adopted as an emergency. Next, we have ordinance 21-55. I need permission to read it by title only.
So moved.
Second?
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
An ordinance authorizing the payment of amounts due under certain contracts requiring certification of the availability of funds and declaring it as an emergency. I need a motion to suspend the second and third reading of the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Need a motion to adopt the emergency clause of the ordinance.
So moved?
Second?
Mr. Putoff?
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Sextro?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Now I need a motion to adopt the ordinance as an emergency.
So moved.
Second,
Mr. Sextro.
Yes.
Ms. Smiley Robertson.
yes.
Mr. Albrecht.
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Putoff.
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer.
Yes.
I now declare ordinance 21-55 adopted as an emergency. Is there any other business to come before the council tonight?
Mayor, heard a rumor over the weekend that one of our council members ran off and got married over a week or so ago, and I want to congratulate Mr. Schaefer.
Who?
Show us the ring.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Yeah. You have a speech?
No,
No?
He's not denying it.
Not denying.
I'm not denying it.
He's got the ring to prove it. Any other comments? If not, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Ms. Smiley Robertson.
Yes.
Mr. Sextro.
Yes.
Mr. Putoff.
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer.
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht.
Yes.
Now declare the meeting adjourned.